And I wanted to use a lot of what I learned and my experience from large business to apply some of that learning to helping smaller businesses. Because the issues very often are the same, but you don't necessarily have those huge legal departments like Gale heads or can afford, the kind of support you need to deal with these issues. And that is what took me to the PSOJ, where I chair their corporate governance committee. And that has led me into, such a new world with our corporate governance code, our corporate governance index, and to come, our corporate governance toolkit. You've got to look out for that. So that is what has me here today to share with you how governance can help you to deal with these challenges that you're all facing.
This panel is going to be entitled Embracing ESG, Businesses Creating a Sustainable Future. Now, for this panel discussion, we're going to be exploring the critical role of businesses in creating a sustainable future, focusing on the environmental, social, and governance principles. We will discuss sustainability issues in Jamaica, leveraging ESG for business growth, some challenges and opportunities that there are for MSMEs, barriers to implementation, and the tools available to support sustainable initiatives.
I have this distinguished panel here, and I will say, as a part of what we're talking about in ESG, around the social, there is also gender equality, and the next time we'll make sure that there is equality on the panel.
We're overcoming.
We will make sure that happens the next time. But I just wanted to start real quick. We hear about ESG. Everyone has their different notion about it. So if I could start to my right, could you just introduce yourself and how do your organization view ESG?
Hello? Okay, everybody's hearing me. Hi everyone, morning. I'm Gail Solomon and I am General Counsel at Grace Kennedy Limited, but I'm also proudly the ESG lead for the company. And I think for us, it really has become that ESG is very much a part of what we do. I think at one point we viewed ESG as a sort of nice to do, a best practice, but now we very much see it as integral to growth and opportunity and moving forward. So for example, one of our big initiatives for 2030, Melanie mentioned, 2030 is to list on an international stock exchange. Perhaps in the US. That would not be possible for Grace Kennedy if we don't have a robust ESG framework, and we just see it as integral to the way to do business moving forward. Our internal stakeholders, our employees, are demanding it, and so our external stakeholders, our consumers, our customers. So it really has become a way of doing business for us.
Thank you so much, Gail. Ali?
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Terry-Ann. Good morning. Is it still morning? Good morning, everyone. My name is Ali, as Terry-Ann shared. I'm the CEO of CorpCare. We're a boutique ESG consultancy headquartered here in Kingston, Jamaica. We're an end-to-end service provider. And the way that I really think about ESG, or our organization thinks about ESG, is as a disclosure framework. I think one of the challenges to date with all of the predecessors of ESG, whether it be corporate social responsibility or corporate philanthropy or environmental conservation, has been this lack of emphasis on metricizing the world of sustainability and putting some emphasis around monitoring and evaluation. While there's still no universality around, standards and frameworks for measuring ESG, I think we're getting closer to that, and I think regulatory landscapes are catching up to that. But really, we think about it as a way of monitoring and evaluating the way that companies operate from an environmental, social, and a governance perspective. And I think that that's the way that, I'm biased, but I think that's the way that we have to think about it. To really see meaningful change in this space. Thank you.
Excellent. Over to you.
Good morning, all. I am Camille Facey. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to see all of you here. I am a commercial attorney at law. and I have been practicing for over 40 years. I started when I was 10. We have to be clear about that. So most of my life was spent in large corporate, providing legal support to listed companies. For the last 12 years, I've been in my own firm, a family firm, Facey Law, and I wanted to use a lot of what I learned and my experience from large business to apply some of that learning to helping smaller businesses. Because the issues very often are the same, but you don't necessarily have those huge legal departments like Gale heads or can afford, the kind of support you need to deal with these issues. And that is what took me to the PSOJ, where I chair their corporate governance committee. And that has led me into, such a new world with our corporate governance code, our corporate governance index, and to come, our corporate governance toolkit. You've got to look out for that. So that is what has me here today to share with you how governance can help you to deal with these challenges that you're all facing.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. A lot of familiar faces for me in here. I am Jody Johnson, Jody with an I, and I am the Environmental and Social Officer here with the IDB Invest team. Now, I'll preface my introduction to say that it was rough for Terry to draw me out here simply because of the role I have with IDB Invest, where my clients generally do need me. And in that regard, how do we view ESG? From my side, which is the technical side, I'm out in the fields. A lot of my clients often don't recognize me when I'm presented like this. We view it as a holistic approach from the execution and preparatory stage of a project, once our clients come to us with a business need, straight through to the implementation. They often view our side as the police, the part of the project cycle that slows things down, simply because we are so thorough in our screening. But at the end of the day, I've seen it through and through on the public side, which I was with before, and now on the private side, that once our clients, especially those new to the ESG concept, once they see it in action, they come to truly appreciate the added value, whether it be from a cost-saving perspective or improving the efficiency of their operation and not having to pay JPS so much money, for example, and things of this nature. So I'll get more into that with the questions.
Excellent. Thank you, ladies, for the introductions. So I'll start real quick with you, Ali. Other than being good citizens, because that's how it used to be viewed, tell us how integrated ESG principles can drive sustainable economic growth, especially for SMEs here, and how do you advise your clients?
Sure, thank you so much for that question. So I think that this has been a question that all of us in the space of consulting around ESG and sustainability in general have been trying to answer, particularly in a quantifiable way, right? For how many dollars you spend in the world of ESG, or how many dollars you invest, how many do you get back in terms of long-term profitability? And I think we're not getting that direct, 1 to X ratio, but we are getting some other things. I think one of the huge things, especially that we see in the Caribbean region, where oftentimes especially our SMEs complain about things like talent retention, is that ESG significantly drives talent acquisition and retention, right? So on average, you can reduce employee turnover rate by up to 37% by investing in robust environmental, social, and governance strategies, by having employees really involved in volunteerism across your organization. And I think, not just keeping them, but also attracting them, right? Gen Z, millennial talent in particular are really not willing to compromise on their personal values and personal goals to work with organizations that are not thinking about this, right? I think another thing is brand equity. So when a customer goes into a supermarket and they're looking at various products, it's our hope that they choose products like those that Grace offers, having a robust ESG framework, right? right? I've written down a few other things. I think, just efficiency is a huge one, especially when we look at environmental efficiencies, looking at appropriate waste management, cost savings from an energy use perspective, water conservation. The list really goes on, but I think ultimately the way that this really supports businesses is by looking at their longevity, their long-term success, right? So if you're making upfront investments today, it will pay dividends long-term for companies and the societies that they operate in.
Great. So let me ask, and I'm going to go to you, Gail, because Ali just mentioned about small companies, and she also mentioned about the drive from our customers, right? Who want these socially and ESG sustainable standards built into organizations. You represent Grace Kennedy, a large company. But is this only for large companies from your estimation? Is this more relevant from a sectorial perspective, an industry perspective, or is this something that should be broadly integrated? And what have you seen that are some of the benefits from the position that you sit?
Okay, thanks so much for that. So this is a really important perspective for us to delve into a little bit. So, and whether you're big, small, or in between, and this is something that resonates with my CEOs and CFOs, because obviously profitability is very important to them, as it should be. ESG is really an opportunity, right? We tend to see it as an additional compliance obligation, an additional thing to do, an additional cost. But the reality is that it really does create opportunities for us. So Ali would have mentioned the whole issue of employee retention and recruitment. That's important for every business, whether you are 1,500 or 1,500. It's important for you to have an engaged and motivated workforce, because that will inure to your longevity and your profitability. Responsible products and services. This is something that we should all be aspiring to, because it's good for our communities, it's good for the environment, it's good for business, because if you have good products, then your profitability will increase, whether you are small, medium, or large. So it really, I don't think, is limited to a particular industry or a particular business size. It really does inure to the fact that a rising tide lifts all ships, right? So if you as a small business are doing well and you are contributing positively to the society and the community you operate in, then you are creating a stronger and more robust market for you to offer your products in. So I really don't think it's industry specific or has to do with size. I can see that the finance sector is well represented. I saw Arlene and I see Maya from Scotia and First Global Bank. Financial institutions have a big role to play. They don't think about it necessarily, because we think about manufacturing a lot as the ones that, really have the work to do. But financial literacy, financial inclusion, serving underserved communities is an ESG initiative. And it's also good for business, because it means that you're increasing your market base. So I think that we really have to view ESG, as Ali said, as a way to measure ourselves, hold ourselves accountable, let the public know what we're doing, motivate others, and to really increase awareness and education. So
I'm happy you called out the financial institutions that's here. Okay, go ahead, Hallie, and then I'm going to turn to Jody, because she represents financial institutions in the room.
No, so I just wanted to add that I think, this is of critical importance to be thinking about for SMEs in particular, because it affects access to capital, right? And we're seeing that tide shift in the US, in Europe, in other regions, and I think that it will ultimately shift in our region, right? For example, Citibank offers preferential loan rates to organizations who have a robust ESG framework in place. They have capital specifically for deployment with organizations like that. So I think it's really, we're sitting here with the IDB, who does as well. So it's really important to think for organizations who are seeking funding or who are seeking capital to grow, that this is a huge means to that end.
Excellent. So Jody, with an I, the IDB provides funding, the IDB Invest specifically provides investments to financial institutions, but you also provide funding to corporates, right? Specifically there, what do you look for in your investments? How do you assess that investment based on ESG criteria and standards? And tell us a little bit more about the insights of what you look at, because what you look for drives what the banks will look for when they're lending to the SMEs.
All right, good, thanks for that. So the best way to approach this question, and it will allow me to speak from the heart, is to give you an idea of what my day-to-day job is at IDB Invest as it relates to that specific question. So, environmental and social officer. We have financial intermediaries as one set of clients, and then we have the corporate with the sectors, manufacturing, construction, agriculture, energy, blah, blah, blah. So my job is to supervise and monitor any projects that we screen in the bank that we categorize as high or medium risk. This will also apply to financial intermediaries. So to do that, and I don't just work in Jamaica, so Hub, Jamaica, I have projects in Guyana, Suriname, Barbados, my poor host, don't see me, right? Because I have to be on the ground supervising. This is the implementation part once you've gotten our funding and I've screened you. All right, so what do we look for? We're guided by our sustainability policy, specific to the IDB Invest. But we're also guided by the World Bank IFC standards, which is their private entity. There are 8 standards. The first one, and that would permit me to highlight some of the persons I work with here, some of the consultants, the assessment and management of environmental and social risks. So you come to us with a project, we're going to screen. Is this a high-risk project, a medium-risk project, a low-risk project? We give it an alphabet, A, B, C. A are our highest-risk projects that might result in involuntary resettlement of a huge population. The client might need to put a transmission line through a protected area. I have an A project in Barbados. They're doing renewable, hydrogen, agri, solar. All right. If you're B, you're kind of in between. C, not so much risk. Financial intermediaries, we kind of take the same approach. The second standard, we're looking at labor. We're going to dive into your labor. How you treat your workers, your interaction with your contractors. We're looking at your supply chain. Good for you if you already have EDGE certification, green certification, all these lovely things. We're tracing it back. If you come to us about solar panels, we're going to look at, are they coming from a region that has high risk of child and forced labor? Looking at all of that, we're serious about it. The next thing, we're looking at community health, safety, and security. Does your project have risk to the community? Disease, how your contractors are going to interact. We're looking at resource efficiency and pollution management, all the things that our developers spoke about, sewage, waste treatment. Good for you again if you're already doing some things good. We're also looking at involuntary resettlement and displacement. Do you need to move people if you're going to build or put something new in place? We're looking at indigenous peoples. That's not such a big thing in Jamaica, but there are smaller countries or other islands where they do have heavy indigenous populations, like Suriname. We're going to look at the potential impacts of the project on that. And finally, cultural heritage. There's a chance you might dig earth, you find something that you never thought. So we put procedures in place to monitor and manage that. Then we screen you, we do some documents, public disclosure, it's a whole process, and then I come in and supervise during the project to make sure that you have agreed to do the things that we've identified as gaps that could improve your business efficiency and maintain it also with legal and international compliance. The end.
So that's a lot. And that is not for the SMEs, because we are very aware that, you don't have a department that has people like Gail sitting in it, right? But if I may just go to Camille now, tell us that perspective, bring that down, what Jody just spoke about. How does that make it applicable to SMEs from the work that you're doing, PSOJ, and the codes that you're working on?
There we go. Try until you succeed. The first thing I'm going to say as a small business person is, we thought it was hard to get loans before, but if this is what is now facing us, we are just trying to make our patty or build our little building and hope that somebody will buy it, or make our juice. And now we are beset by all of this kind of crosses. What is this? So the thing about it is that we have scientists telling us that at 1.5 degrees warming, and you heard we're heading for 2.4, we have half a chance of a livable future in the Caribbean. We need that to sink in, because the reality is that we can't do as we have often done and said, is them over there in the first world cause all of these crosses? I am going to focus on earning my living. Our businesses will not be sustainable in the future. That is the reality. So we have to focus on it. So as a small business, what are the kind of strategies? What do we do? So I'm from the governance world. So I'm going to say to you, use governance to help you. But governance is just more rules and crosses. One of the fundamental things in governance is that you have a board of directors. You have management and you have a board. The board is responsible for the long-term sustainability of the organization. Yes, they give oversight to management, but they are the ones who are looking out there to the future and should have been looking many years ago to see that these climate issues were arising, that we were going to have flooding, that where we put our good restaurant on the seafront, the waves are going to rise and they're going to wash away everything, because they are responsible for looking forward. So you need a competent board of directors that is looking into the future and then helping management to develop the strategies and the strategic plan to know what is coming down the tubes. Not if, but when. So the amazing thing is that there are people and resources there to help us. So while management is busy making sure that the bathroom in the apartment is built correctly, and by the way, I think we've had some wonderful strategies so far, learning to swim, prayer and fasting, and guided squatting. I mean, you know, luckily we have the little checklist in the flyer. You can read those too. But the long and the short of it is that our boards and our managements, we have to be aware. So my strategies are first awareness and education, and then we have to have the different persons who are responsible for different things. And so the boards need to kick in and start to look at what is the future for this organization that I am a director of, and what do we need to put in place to help us navigate the individual issues from my organization, because each organization will have different issues.
So in essence, you're saying we all have a role, even if we don't have to go through Jodi's long checklist of process.
We'll get back to that.
We do have a role at every level, and there are bite-sized steps. Okay, bite-sized steps, yeah. Wow. But there are small steps that we can take as an SME, starting with our governance. And we heard a lot earlier about the ESG, the climate, the sustainability. What we have not really zoned in on a lot, and I'm going to move to you, Ali, is on the social. Talk to us a little about that. Where does that come in? Because sometimes we ignore that part of it in the whole equation.
Sure. So I think when we're preparing for this panel, we're talking about social sustainability and this toolkit that SMEs could have. So I kind of came prepared to talk about this toolkit. So I'll get to that toolkit. But I think it goes back to what Camille said. I think that governance is really that underpinning framework, right? And from that, we can build out our environmental and our social sustainability initiatives. I think, though, in the most simplistic terms, when we think about our social impact, we need to be thinking first about our internal social impact. So, for example, on our board of directors, do we have appropriate representation of gender, race, religious identity, and so on across age, right? Do we feel as though our society and the people that we are serving are meaningfully reflected on our board? Do we feel that they're meaningfully reflected in management? Do we feel they're meaningfully reflected across our organization? Are we inclusive of people? Are the spaces that we occupy wheelchair accessible? Do we have options for people who are hearing impaired? Right? There's so many different ways that we can consider social inclusion, and then I think that there are so many ways that we can consider the social impact that we have on the communities directly around us, right? And I think, just if I may, Camille, going back to kind of that idea of how do we get to that place of including all of these considerations, I think it comes from that governance piece. I think it comes from risk and compliance, making sure that, we are adherent to NEPA, we're adherent to NWA, we're adherent to the bodies that manage the industry that we occupy in, right? And I think a useful step that any small business in any industry can do is go to the SASB website and download the industry standards for the industry that you occupy, if that's manufacturing, if that's tourism, if that's, what other industries do we have? Social services, whatever industry it may be, right? Download those metrics. They're organized in accordance with ESG, and start to identify some activities that you're not currently engaging in, and think about ways that you can engage in those to have a longer term impact on the community, both internally and externally. And those metrics will in turn serve you long term, especially if there are regulatory considerations coming down the pipe. And they'll also help you long term in terms of reporting, and your board will really, really appreciate them. So just trying to close the loop on the board there, because I do think that's a really important point that Camille made.
So Gail, tell us some initiatives, one or two examples of some initiatives around social. I know Grace Kennedy is a large group, but you do have some SMEs within that ambit. So from that perspective, share with us some insights there.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Terian. And I think the important thing is that there is wide applicability. We talked about that there are so many initiatives that fall under this wider ESG umbrella that would have a cross-functional application, whether you are in varying industries or whether you are a smaller entity or whether you're employing 2,000 persons like Grace Kennedy does, that there are initiatives that can be impactful wherever you may sit in that wider sphere. So for GK, even before we sort of codified with the help of Ali and Corp Care or ESG framework, we were already doing things internally, and it came from within. So Ali, you can have a whole consultation with Ali around doing a materiality assessment as your first pillar of your ESG framework, but truthfully, you can have a discussion with your team, with your employees, and that's what we did at GK in some of the smaller entities, and it spans the wider organization. So what are some of the things that we can do that would resonate with you as we start on this ESG journey? And some of the feedback was awesome. Some simple things like, we really want to be a green plant. So whether it's our office or our factory, we want it to be more energy efficient, so let's embark on those initiatives. Can we also get some reusable, Ali and I are here with our with our reusable giant water bottles. We don't want to be contributing to more disposables. So can we get coffee mugs that are maybe branded, and let's use those in the office so that people aren't buying styrofoam, etc. So those kinds of initiatives can be implemented. They will have an impact whether you are big or small. Another important initiative that has always been very near and dear to GK is volunteerism. So we have not one, but 2 foundations, and community investment is a big part of what we do. So for GK, we are able to have our employees dedicate their time to community service, and we facilitate that. As a small business, you can do that easily. You know, if you have 10 employees and they give 2 hours a month, you know, that is 240 hours across the organization for the year. That's not insignificant. Imagine the impact that could have on a worthy cause. And once you're contributing to the community, then you have that circular effect that we spoke about earlier. So those are 2 small ones. Small in terms of the cost to the organization, but large in terms of the impact.
Excellent, thank you. And I am wrapping up with my questions because I want to open to the audience if there are any questions that they have. But let me go to you real quick, Camille, and then to Jody on your perspective. You mentioned about some toolkits, applicable solutions. You mentioned about some corporate governance thing coming out soon. Tell us a little bit about that. And then Jody, on your side, what is IDB Invest doing to help?
Okay, so first of all, I think we all need to be very proud of Grace Kennedy. They are gold standard. And of course, the other day when I was trying to find an ESG policy to put in the said toolkit I'm about to tell you about, I went to Grace. They didn't have the policy, but they had the framework. So look at their annual report. What we have done at the PSOJ is we have developed a corporate governance code. It is titled the Jamaica Corporate Governance Code, and we consulted widely the attorneys, the accountants, the different industries, and that code is now adopted as our code in Jamaica, and it sets out the principles and the standards that organizations need to comply with. And it's some very basic things like integrity, etc., risk management, things like that. Go on the website, find it.
What's the website?
Oh, yeah, PSOJ, tell us. I don't want to go ask the PSOJ website, right? We're ready. Then now, listed companies, in conjunction with the JSE, we have developed well, really, it's the JSE who developed it. We supported them. The Corporate Governance Index that measures every publicly listed company in this country. So you, as an investor, shareholder, you want to ensure you are investing in a company that is going to be around and give you a return. So you want to know what their governance is. And that index rates our companies AAA, BBB, so you can have an idea of what is their level of governance. We didn't make it public for the first few years because people were threatening to sue us all over the place, but we are expecting that it should be made public this year, and certainly the companies all have an idea of their ratings. And lastly, and should be launched by the end of the month, is a toolkit that is boxing bread out of the mouth of lawyers, because we have given you all the precedents for your board charter, your audit committee charter, for the sexual harassment policy. That one hurts me deeply. I spent a lot of time on that. All the policies. So what we're doing is we're trying to say, small businesses, yes, we know it's a lot, but there are tools available to you. And I really want to thank IDB because they have been our partner and supporting us in the provision and development of all these things. And I know I should stop, but I just want to mention, when it comes to some of the little things you can do, like this one always bothers me. Why is it whenever I go to buy my chicken or whatever, no matter how I tell the people I don't need the plastic knife and fork, You have 6 of them in the bag. It will save you money if you don't put the plastic forks with because I'm going home to eat it. So as small businesses, there are things we can do. There was this airline that watched and measured what people ate out of what they got on their planes. And they found that people weren't eating quite a lot of things, so they stopped providing it and saved money and reduced the waste. But the plastic, just coming off the board of NSWME, you can separate your plastics. You can make sure that they don't end up in the gullies. There are things that we have to do to promote resilience in our organizations, but there's a lot we have to do to support the national efforts. And we also need to hold the government accountable. Where are all the seawalls that are going to protect our businesses?
Okay, so I'll just rein in Camille here.
I have a lot of thoughts on this issue.
We see. So Jody, if you could just quickly, how does IDB Invest support some of the challenges that are being raised here? And then the floor is open, so you can start preparing your questions. Jody.
Okay, I'm glad you went to that question, because I just want to tell the audience that the face that Terry made is the general face that most of our clients make when they come to us for money. Like, oh my God, all these things. But remember, guys, I mentioned the screening, and depending on what you're coming to us for in terms of investment, if it's a tech project, it's a Cat C, low risk. Half of those things that I mentioned might not apply. Okay, so that's why we screen to determine where to place you on the scale based on the level of environmental and social risk that we have identified for the project. Now, one of the main things that we see with a lot of our clients, and again, not all the performance standards will apply. You might just come to us because you want to invest in a solar panel, but that is where labor, PS is going to come in, because we have to screen the supply chain. But again, touching on all the things that the ladies looked at, we're looking at your code of ethics, how you implement things and treat the wider community. So how do we support you? We find that either one, a lot of our clients do not have adequate E&S personnel on board. So if we screen you for a project and we see that, okay, you already have E&S support, that's not something that we're going to focus on too much. But if you see that based on the profile of the project, you have very little E&S support, we will recommend this. Another important thing, an environmental and social management system, is a hallmark document that we ask all of our clients to prepare if you have not yet had one. You can Google it, but essentially it's how to do your E&S management in your day-to-day business. And we find a lot of our clients struggle with that, especially separate from the other elements that we might ask them to implement. So what are some of the ways we overcome that? One, Melanie would have mentioned technical assistance. Depending on the project, we might need additional feasibility studies, environmental and social impact assessments, shout out to ESL, work with them a lot on that. And so we might be able to give some assistance there to develop these studies, because it might be hard for clients to find that upfront out of pocket. It's an additional cost that they would not have anticipated. Where am I going to find the money, right? So we'll work with you through that. The next thing, the MEs, the E&S officers, depending on my client needs, where I see them struggling, I try to provide that support. Some of them, I'm sure, are emailing me at the moment, asking for some guidance and all of that. So we try our best to support our clients, because we're not going to throw all these requirements at you and just leave you to drown. That's not what we are here for. Same with our supervision and monitoring, that some of them, again, I always say, I am not here to police you. I am actually here to protect you in the execution of your job. From how your contractors are interacting with the community, we have a lot of sexual harassment and all of that. We are here to help mitigate and buffer that from the project development, to make sure that you have things in place before that can offset all of these risks. So there are several tools. available that we try to help and have additional support. But if you come to us for money, you can find out some more, and we'll guide you in the right direction.
Thank you so much for that, Jody. And just to add, Melanie works with the advisory services of IDB Invest. So we work a lot on the business side along with the advisory to provide that support that is needed to clients. I will also add, even though I'm the moderator, let me step out of the moderator shoe. I do represent IDB Group, and we do have different arms of the group that provide support across the full life cycle of businesses, from IDB Lab, that's doing innovation and technology support, all the way to the sovereign side around policies and systems in place from the government. So
We're going to...
Oh, Jody, want to add something real quick, and then I see we'll take a question from my right.
This is not going to take long, but I forgot it's very important. So I mentioned companies like ESL, but back to your question, I find that we need more environmental and social consulting firms that we can recommend to our clients in the region specifically. So we have very few, they're either only based and known in their specific islands. So like Barbados will have Stantec, Jamaica will have ESL, but in terms of the regional span of that, and so we welcome any E&S consultants out there that we do not yet have either on retainer. Come forward, we can always recommend our SMEs, depending on what their business needs are, to work with you guys.
Thanks for that, Jody, because I hope that we're all listening to the opportunities that are coming out here for underserved markets and areas that SMEs can step into the space. So let me pause here and go to our audience for questions. Just identify who you are before you ask your question.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ava Tomlin, and I am affiliated also with the PSOJ. In my primary work role, one of my functions is that I'm in charge of the ESAP program for the company. And one of the things that we do is to try to engage the community and the end recipient as much as possible in developing the CSR and the ESAP programs. One of the things that hit us, because at the end of the day, CSR does cost money, is that we couldn't reclaim for a lot of our donations because the TAJ had noted that we needed to make donations to approved charities. Now, that's fine when you're in Kingston, but when you're in the more rural areas, you have very few approved charities. And so what I'm asking for is basically a request to see how we can lobby the government to relook this, because a lot of really needy people are being overlooked because of it. Especially when you're in the rural areas. In the area that we are located, there are 3 registered charities in the entire parish only, and none of them are in the vicinity of the infrastructure that I manage. So that's basically it. It's a request. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that request. I'm not sure if it's...
Just to add there,
Yeah,
though,
I was going to say PSOJ.
No, Jamaica is trying to get off the FATF grey list. Many of you may have heard about that. So we can continue to use our credit cards to go online and buy stuff. But coming with that has come changes to the Companies Act, where penalties like for not filing your annual return have moved from 10,000 Jamaican dollars to $5 million. So beg you please, file your annual returns. Not notifying changes of directors, things like that are now at that kind of level. We have had changes to the Trust and Corporate Services Providers Act, so little persons who would normally have gone out there and taken minutes for a meeting, say of a citizens association, one of Dayton's developments, They now have to have a license from the FSC as if they were a financial institution. And I can tell you the costs of the licenses and the obligations are prohibited. And I say that to say, similarly, charities. Charities, you have to now be an approved charity to be on that list. And in order to get approval, you have to go through a compliance procedure. Now, my position was always, this is not new in the rest of the world, but it seems to me that in Jamaica, we have not scoped things. So we have just taken, because we did things last minute, some of the changes came to Parliament at the end of March and had to be approved the same day. Because we do things last minute, we just use a one-size-fits-all. So one of the things we're doing from the PSOJ is we are lobbying. We haven't put the charities on our list, but we are lobbying like heck about getting some of this legislation re-looked at, because it's going to impact us all. But the first priority right now is to get off the grey list and not go to the black list. I just share that.
All right, another question.
All right, good afternoon again. Tevin Farquharson from Sagility Limited. The question that I have is, one part of ESG is waste segregation. Now, our company is striving towards segregating our waste, but what I want to know is, when we do so, the National Waste Committee, do they just take everything and deposit it to the landfill? Because when we see they collect our garbage, they just collect it, throw it in one big garbage pan, and we don't know what happens next. So we might do our part in segregating our waste, but is the government doing their part in segregating the waste that we provide?
Okay. If you put it out, and we have here Lenworth Kelly, he chairs the Technical and Operations Committee for the NSWME, very hard job. So if you put it out with the regular garbage, everything goes to the same place. But we have many communities now where we are picking up plastics separately on specified dates. Also, there are depots where you can take the plastics if the plastics are not being collected in your community. We're getting the additional 50 trucks, and when those 50 trucks land, which they should this year, we will be able to have more designated trucks to do the plastic collection in the separate areas. We also have initiatives relating to composting and stuff, but let me just stop there. But the government isn't totally there, but we're trying to get there.
Is this a follow-up on that same point or something else? Right, I'm going to go.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Okay, good. Whatever time of the day it is. All right, so my name is Daniel White. I'm the Corporate Social Responsibility Ambassador for CMA CGM Jamaica Limited, one of the major shipping giants in the world. Now, I am just adding to the conversation from a company standpoint what we have been doing to contribute to sustainability. So we know of the CMA CGM Act products, where we have gone to measure, using a mechanism and a matrix to measure the carbonization, the impact that each container has on the environment, moving from whether it's Far East, Caribbean, wherever. So we have now been able to calculate the impact that one container will have on the environment. In doing that, we have had a series of products, the service additives such as the mixed biofuel, and moving to using eco-friendly containers and all of that to kind of mitigate and help with the sustainable agenda that our world is going. Now, for small business owners that is probably just moving a pallet from China or wherever in the world and not yet moving a full container, you can contribute to this sustainability. Of course, there are other shipping lines and they might be doing similar projects, but it's important to just check to see if the companies that you are shipping with, they are using the environmental friendly containers. Moving from a pallet product to a container, we are also certifying customers and consumers that are, using the mixed biofuel, and one container moving from, let me use the Far East because that's the farthest journey, to Jamaica, can save up to 10% of the impact of carbonization using vessels and containers that is governed under this mechanism. So it's something to look into, and it's something to think about when you are shipping. Thank you. All right, so it's Daniel White, CMA CGM Jamaica Limited. The company, sometimes people don't familiar, but if you look at the containers, you will see it. We own a major stake in the Kingston KFTL, Kingston Freeport Terminal as well. So, and Jamaica, I must say, continue to act as a transshipment hub for the world. So the larger vessels do take the containers to Jamaica. We use our feeder vessels to bring them to other countries in the Caribbean. So shipping is contributing a lot to the environment, and we are trying to mitigate that.
So thank you, Daniel. I mean, I've supported SME and entrepreneurs for many years now, and I love how you took the opportunity to promote what you're doing. So hats off to you.
Thank you very much. Good day. I am Ruth Pratap Singh, and I'm from the Environmental Solutions team. So as we have heard, congratulations to the panelists. I mean, we have gotten a lot of information this morning, and the E in the SG, has been put on so much of a back burner because it's really the ESG frameworks have been developed based on the social corporate responsibility and frameworks. So you have a lot of work already done in the governance and in the social sphere. But I am a little concerned that the environmental component is not as robust as it ought to be. And I'm glad to know that a lot is happening, but what I'm finding is that for companies with international links and which have been listed on the major stock exchanges, it is to their advantage to be listed as a green company because of the various factors, including, Gen Z, who are more inclined to invest in green companies. But in Jamaica, and congratulations to Grace Kennedy, as Camille said, you have the gold standard. But for ESG, I don't think people should be daunted because there are various levels. You don't have to start with the gold standard, but you can start and build up. And I am encouraging us all to start looking a little bit more fulsome in the environmental components. And as Ali said, you have frameworks like the SASB and the GRI. You can Google them, and you can get your listing. My question is, how does the SMEs or MSMEs do their work in terms of all this data collection? Because your credibility really lies in the data and what are the verification methods you have to substantiate your work in ESG for small and medium-sized businesses.
You want to take that, Ali? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, our mic went roaming. Thank you for that question, Ruth. So, two things. I want to just respond first to your concerns around how robust or not robust the response to environmental considerations have been, and then I'll answer your question around data management. I think it's so interesting that you raised that, right? Because your focus as ESL is the environment, and interestingly, one of the biggest things, which is, why we've been chatting with ESL anyway, is that the biggest thing that happens for us in conversations with companies is that's the thing that they're most worried about. So even if the frameworks haven't caught up, the companies are most concerned about their environmental protection and their impact, right? At least from what we can see regionally. So I think that that's really encouraging. I think, too, that they do feel it's a mammoth job. I think when we say the environment, it kind of feels like, well, what does that mean for us, right? Whereas if we say, okay, governance, it's our corporate governance, or it's our, systems, or if we say social, it's the people that we're working with, right? The environment kind of feels like this mammoth task that, how are we going to wrap our hands around this? But I think that the IFRS standards are going to make a big difference here. S1 is looking at social and governance, and S2 is looking at environmental disclosures. I know, for example, the BOJ, the biggest thing that they're looking at is climate disclosure requirements. The JSC is thinking about this. So I think, even for publicly traded companies, that will be a really big shift in thinking. So that's on the environmental piece. And then on the data management piece, I think that there's levels, right? As you said, there's the gold standard, which is likely the use of software. There's a few different types of software. I'll make a small plug for CorpCare. We have a software partnership that's low cost and catered to the Caribbean region that we can chat about at length. But there's also other types of software that you can use. There's Microsoft BI, for example, which is a tool that you can have an online subscription to, and you can do data visualization and analytics. But you can also just use a spreadsheet, right? You can take the metrics from SASB or GRI or IFRS. IFRS a little too general right now, and build them into a spreadsheet. If there's anyone in your company who's really good at Excel, this is their time to shine. Making sure that you track those things, because they will be really, really useful long term. Data does become a lot, especially when you start measuring it over years. So I would, definitely recommend segregating it by sheet and everything. But the lowest cost, most immediate response to data collection would be a spreadsheet, I think, and just making sure you have access to that information all the time.
All right, and then our final question for this panel.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Michael Lord. I represent Lord Car Rental. I have a question for Ali, Miss Ali Matalan. We were at a PSOJ meeting yesterday, and they spoke about strategic planning. I want to know, they spoke about a 2-year, 3-year, and then they said 100-year. I've never thought so far before in my life. So it was eye-opening. So I was wondering if Ms. Matalan is thinking along those lines for the ESG thing.
100 years.
Well, hopefully, I think the strategy is to keep the world around long enough to have a strategy for 100 years, right? But I'll make a plug for CorpCare here in terms of we're going to have an ESG 101 session around strategic planning and all of that next week, Thursday. You can visit our website and sign up. Sorry, that would happen if I was singing. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about kind of how you strategically plan around ESG for year 1, year 3, year 5. We're not going to talk about 100-year, but I will raise that to the group that we need to be thinking about 100 years. But let's just make sure that the Earth is here then to do that. Thank you for that question.
Just tell them where they can get more information about this session next Thursday.
Sure, and we're also going to be putting on the website some toolkits for SMEs that they can pull down around ESG, but it's www.corpcareja.com. We're on Instagram. You can find me after. I have cards. Thank you so much, Terry-Ann, who is an entrepreneur enthusiast, for letting me do that. I appreciate it.
No problem. And I will also just plug for IDB Invest. We have our Sustainability Week that is coming up. It's in June in the Amazon, but it's all about ESG and sustainability and what we can do, because everyone knows what is happening in Amazon and how we're moving towards that. And the Caribbean have our own issues. But you can log on to our website, learn a little bit more about our Sustainability Week. It will be available virtually as well as some in person. So just log on to idbinvest.org and you can register there. And I am aware that we have about 2 minutes before 12. We say we'd end at 12. So could I ask my panelists 2 takeaways? 2 sentences, not 2 paragraphs or
2 sentences.
Brief. Takeaway for the audience.
ESG is not as scary as it is. If you're not yet implementing it at first, yes, the road will be a little rocky, just like when you just start the gym for the new year, you know, the muscles will hurt. But then once you get into the groove of it, you'll see the added value, the muscles developing, and you'll have a more resilient company. Boom.
Boom. Next, Camille.
Thanks, Jody.
Awareness. You need to become aware, and then having become aware, then you can look at what steps, practical steps, you can begin to take.
Thank you.
Thank you, Camille.
Gail, I'm sorry that you have to go last because then all the takeaways are going to be taken. So I think one big takeaway for me is that as PSOJ and as entities involved in PSOJ, we need to be lobbying for more effective waste management and policies around that. And the second takeaway for me is that every organization needs to be capturing this information, monitoring and evaluating it.
Thanks, Ali. First one is not a takeaway. The first one is just to echo the sentiments that these conversations have to happen more. So kudos to the PSOJ and IDB Invest for bringing us all here together to have these conversations, because I think that is what is so important and will actually move the needle. And it is incremental, but there will be actual large-scale change. We are very much at risk as small island developing nations, and we need to take it seriously. So in terms of takeaways, charity starts at home. So we're all business people. We need to introduce the ESG frameworks and principles to our teams to ensure that we are aware and we have the knowledge, because that is where it all starts. And then secondly, we have to see ESG as an opportunity and not just not a crosses obligation. As Camille pointed out, there really are significant opportunities, as we've heard today, for us personally and professionally. And so that is really a key takeaway for me, that it's so easier for us to say, oh, Lord Jesus, another compliance obligation, another cost. But the truth is that this framework really does produce opportunities.
Thank you. And if I may give my two takeaways. Firstly, we always hear that cash is king. Yes, it is. But knowledge is king. Knowledge is gold. The more we know, the more we can benefit, seize the opportunities that exist. Because if we just operate with these little binoculars that focus on what we're doing, we'll never see the opportunities that are out there for us. And the second thing is, IDB Group is here to support Jamaica, or private sector organizations, or corporates, or financial institutions. So just reach out to us, and we continue to work through organizations like PSOJ. Thank you very much for being a great audience. And my panelists, thank you.